Thank you for joining us on another special edition of the Florida Chamber's Bottom Line. I'm Tony Carvajal, the Executive Vice President of the Florida Chamber Foundation, and we're continuing our conversation on Florida 2030, and I'm joined today by Joe Tankersley of Unique Visions. Joe, I've enjoyed our conversation about the future and foresight. In the last edition, we started talking about disruption and the power of storytelling. But let's dive a little deeper in some of those issues on disruption. When we're thinking about global competition and Florida competing, we've moved way beyond state versus state. You know, this is a new world of global competition. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're exactly right, Tony. I mean, you think about the 1950s, 1960s model, it was what are the big states that are driving the world economies. Today you have states, and in some cases cities, that are just as competitive in the overall world economy. So while Florida finds itself in a position where they have to compete with the Southeast, the rest of the United States, the rest of North America, they really have to play on a global stage. And that means that they have to think differently about who they are and what role they're going to play in the future.
So businesses are going through a lot of change, but individuals are going through a lot of change. You used this term earlier called micro jobs. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean and what should I and my son and everybody around me be thinking about for tomorrow?
Absolutely. You're totally right. One of the biggest disruptions that we face today economically is the shift in what a job and a career is. 30 years ago, you got out of school, maybe even just high school, you got a job, you knew you were going to retire from that job. Doesn't happen anymore. A lot of that has to do with technology. We have the ability to take what used to be a big job and break it down into tiny little steps and pieces, which means that businesses can allocate the exact resource at the exact moment in time that they need it. That's great for business. It's great for the overall economy. It makes it a little more complicated if you're trying to find a job. So I think in the future the opportunity is how do I get a chance to combine my various passions to have maybe multiple micro careers and still make a good living, have the time to do what I want to do, and be more in control of what's going to happen.
That sounds like we got to learn in a completely different way. I mean, you're not just talking about doing the same thing 9 to 5 every single day. You're talking about doing something different possibly every hour. What are the changes that we got to be thinking about there?
It used to be that it was K through 12 and done, and we were finished for the rest of our life, and we knew what we knew, and we didn't need to know much more after that. We know that's changed. We talk about lifelong learning. We talk about going back to school for people of all ages. What we haven't figured out yet is how to make that system work. And I think one of the big opportunities in the next 15 to 20 years is how do we provide lifelong personalized education to individuals? How do we help individuals take more control of their knowledge and learning and relearning and retraining? And that's across the board. That's people my age, that's young people, that's people in their 40s are going to be in a state of constant learning. And that's a huge opportunity for people who want to provide educational services.
So talent is one of those big issues we focus on when we're talking about Florida 2030 and the 6 pillars, but so is innovation and economic diversification and economic development. We're absolutely convinced and sure that talent is the economic driver of the future. But that means that we've got to be thinking about industries and clusters and what we build for our economy a very different way. Any advice or thoughts on that?
Well, I think you guys are in the right direction to understand that it is talent, and that if you can give people the ability to be creative and imaginative and let them understand better how to be entrepreneurs, I think you open up a lot of opportunities. That's certainly what places like Silicon Valley have proven in the last 10 to 15 years. I think Florida has that opportunity and is in fact already doing it in some places where we're starting to see that. Beyond that, you need to start to think about what kind of communities those innovative people are looking for. And there are certain preferences. They want diversity, they want opportunity, they want the arts. Many times that means how do we build that infrastructure out, not only in our big cities, but even in our medium-sized cities here in Florida.
Joe, thanks so much for focusing on talent and innovation. Let's come back, if you don't mind, for another series and talk about quality of life, quality places, and the types of infrastructures and systems that we're going to need. So. For today, let me just go ahead and sign out and thank you for joining us on another edition of the Florida Chamber's Bottom Line.